Imagine stepping out of your front door into a city that is just entirely ravaged by famine.
And we are not talking about, a temporary shortage or a bad harvest here.
No, not at all. We are talking about a catastrophic, systemic collapse of the entire food supply.
Exactly.
The ancient accounts we are looking at today describe streets literally littered with the white bones of the dead.
It is a horrific scene.
It really is. People are reduced to drawing lots just to purchase whatever meager scraps of food remain hidden away.
Right.
And right in the middle of this total societal collapse is a community of ascetic monks.
Which makes their situation incredibly precarious.
Completely. Because by their very vows, they are forbidden from farming, from storing food, or hoarding anything.
They're entirely dependent on the daily generosity of the local people.
Which means in a starving city.
They are quietly starving to death themselves.
Right. Now, into this grim reality steps an individual with a level of advancement that just completely defies human limitation.
He is operating on a totally different plane.
He looks at the leader of his order and proposes a solution that defies the laws of physics.
He essentially asks for permission to literally flip the Earth's crust upside down.
Yes, just flip it over to access this primordial, honey-like nutritional layer beneath the surface.
And when that is rejected, because, obviously that has massive implications.
Right. His backup plan is to mass teleport the entire community of monks across space.
To a utopian alien continent called Uttarakuru.
Just to secure their morning meal. Welcome to the deep dive.
It is such a staggering visual to open with.
It really is.
And it immediately establishes the profound philosophical stakes of what we are examining today. We are looking at the intersection of unimaginable capability and strict ethical boundaries.
Precisely. And for this deep dive, we are pulling from a towering stack of ancient scriptures, historical monastic codes, and deep analytical essays.
All detailing the life from Maha Moggallana.
Yes. For context, if you are joining us, he was the Buddha's left-hand chief disciple.
Recognized across Buddhist history as the absolute master of supernatural powers, or Idi.
But our mission today is not to just recount a series of, ancient superhero myths.
No, if we only look at the spectacle, we completely miss the architecture of the philosophy here.
Right, so we're going to meticulously unpack the ethics of wielding immense power.
We will examine the hidden dangers and the strict limitations of using quick-fix technological, or in this case, magical solutions to solve complex systemic problems.
And ultimately, we are going to explore the mechanics of a cosmic law that even the most powerful being in the universe cannot outrun.
It's the ultimate boundary.
So whether you are someone trying to understand the intricate, really unforgiving machinery of karma,
or you are simply curious about ancient cosmological accounts of mass teleportation and earth-shaking elemental battles,
this deep dive is custom-tailored for you. But to understand the end of this story, we have to start at the very beginning.
with the origin of what is arguably the most famous spiritual partnership in history.
Before he was Moggallana, the master of powers, he was a man named Kolita.
And his closest friend was Upatissa, who history remembers as Sariputta.
Their societal background is really essential here, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Kolita and Upatissa were not destitute men turning to religion out of desperation.
Right. They weren't running from poverty.
Not at all. They were incredibly wealthy, highly educated Brahmins,
They had mastered the three Vedas.
which represented the absolute pinnacle of academic, religious, and philosophical education in ancient Indian society.
They sat at the very top of a rigid social hierarchy.
They had access to every material and intellectual comfort their world could offer.
Yet the sources detail this profound disillusionment that creeps in.
There is a pivotal moment where they are attending a massive, raucous festival in the city.
Right, the Hilltop Festival.
But rather than enjoying the spectacle, they are struck by a shared, sudden clarity regarding impermanence.
They look at this massive crowd of thousands of people celebrating, and the realization hits them.
That within a century, every single person there will be dead.
It's a paralyzing realization of the futility of material pursuit.
And that realization just strips away the veneer of their privileged lives.
It drives them to leave their estates and become wandering ascetics.
But the true catalyst occurs when Upatissa crosses paths with a monk named Asaji.
Now, Upatissa is a master debater, right?
Yeah.
An intellectual heavyweight.
Yes, but he is completely disarmed by Asaji's remarkably serene demeanor as he walks through the city of Rajagaha collecting alms.
Upatissa approaches him and asks for the core of his teacher's philosophy.
And Assange's response is fascinating because he actively downplays his own knowledge.
Right. He says he is newly ordained.
He claims he can only offer the briefest summary.
But the summary he delivers is just a masterclass in philosophical density.
He says, whatever is subject to origination is subject to cessation.
Whatever arises must naturally cease.
To a modern ear, that might sound like a simple truism, a bit obvious,
Sure.
but the effect it had on Upatissa was immediate and absolute.
We really have to understand the psychological state of Upatissa at that moment.
He and Kolita had spent years systematically dismantling their own worldly attachments,
Their minds were highly conditioned.
like perfectly dry kindling waiting for a spark.
Assagi's stanza wasn't just a poem.
It was the exact logical key required to unlock Upatissa's understanding of dependent origination.
Hearing those words instantly triggered the first stage of enlightenment, an attainment known as stream entry or sotapanna.
Let's pause on that term for a second.
Yeah, let's unpack this, because stream entry isn't just a fleeting moment of clarity, is it?
No, it's a fundamental, irreversible psychological shift.
Attaining stream entry means the permanent eradication of 3 specific mental fetters.
The most significant being the illusion of a permanent, independent self.
Once that illusion shatters, the mind enters the stream that inevitably leads to full liberation.
And Upatissa achieved this profound shift right there on the street.
Now, Kolita and Upatissa had a binding pact.
Right. Whoever discovered the ultimate truth first was obligated to tell the other immediately.
Upatissa finds Kolita, repeats the stanza, and Kolita experiences the exact same instantaneous psychological breakthrough,
They realize they have finally found the path they've been seeking.
which means they have to leave their current teacher.
A well-known skeptic named Sanjaya.
When they announce they are leaving to follow the Buddha, their influence is so significant that 250 of Sanjaya's disciples choose to leave with them.
And the texts contain a very visceral detail here.
It's quite graphic.
They note that Sanjaya was so devastated by this mass defection that he literally vomited hot blood and died on the spot.
It really underscores the immense gravity and the disruptive societal impact of their spiritual realignment.
The disruption was massive.
But as they bring this large group toward the bamboo grove to meet the Buddha, the sources note that the Buddha sees them from afar.
And he makes an immediate proclamation to the surrounding monks.
He identifies these 2 approaching friends as his future chief disciples.
An unsurpassed pair. He recognized their complementary capabilities immediately.
The sources provide a really brilliant pedagogical analogy for their respective roles.
Sariputta, the right-hand disciple who becomes foremost in wisdom, is likened to the biological mother.
He uses his sharp intellect and teaching precision to guide new disciples to that crucial breakthrough of stream entry.
Essentially giving birth to their spiritual life.
And Moggallana, the left-hand disciple, foremost in power, is compared to the wet nurse who takes over and raises the child.
His role was to take those who had achieved the initial breakthrough and use his deep mastery of meditative states to guide them to the ultimate final stages of liberation.
They were just a perfectly calibrated team.
Which brings us to the core tension of our discussion today.
And arguably the most fascinating scenario in the texts.
We need to explore this whole concept of seeking alms in another world.
Navigating the ethics of starvation and supernatural intervention.
This returns us to the famine in Varanja we mentioned at the start.
The situation has reached a critical threshold.
The monks are facing the very real biological reality of starvation.
And Moggallana, possessing these unparalleled abilities, sees a way out that literally no one else can perceive.
He approaches the Buddha with his first proposal.
He asks for permission to invert the Earth's crust.
According to the cosmological framework of these texts, beneath the topsoil, there exists a primordial layer called Nungwan Din
It's described as a perfectly pure Earth essence.
that possesses complete nutritional value and tastes like honey.
Moggallana proposes simply flipping the ground so the monks can sustain themselves on this Nguan Din.
The Buddha's response here is critical.
He does not question Moggallana's ability to perform the act.
Not at all. He questions the ecological ethics of the act.
He asks, what about the creatures living on the Earth? What will happen to the complex ecosystems currently existing on the surface?
And Moggallana has already anticipated this.
He proposes a workaround that is almost too vast to visualize.
He states he will use his powers to expand one of his hands until it is as large as the Earth itself.
It's hard to even wrap your mind around that.
He will scoop up the entirety of the surface ecosystem,
All living creatures, all habitats.
hold them safely in his giant hand, and use his other hand to invert the crust.
It is an assertion of unimaginable mastery over physical matter.
But the Buddha issues a definitive veto,
He commands Moggallana to abandon the idea entirely,
warning that the creatures of the earth would suffer, quote, opposite results.
meaning that despite the magical safety net, the sheer trauma of the displacement would be catastrophic.
Precisely. You cannot subject an entire biosphere to a violent foundational shift without causing immense unintended suffering.
So Moggallana pivots. If he cannot alter the environment to feed the monks, he will remove the monks from the environment.
He introduces proposal number 2.
And this is where the concept of gathering alms in another world comes into play.
He asks the Buddha for permission to teleport the entire monastic order to Uttarakuru.
Now, Uttarakuru is described in Buddhist cosmology as a northern continent, distinct from our own.
It's characterized by immense natural abundance.
It is a place where crops grow without cultivation, and there is absolutely no scarcity.
The Buddha again challenges the logistics, asking how the monks who have not developed supernatural powers will make this journey across dimensions.
Moggallana replies that he will personally transport the entire community himself.
He will carry the monastic order to Uttarakuru every morning for alms and return them.
Yet the Buddha issues a second, unyielding veto. He expressly forbids the relocation.
Okay, I have to push back on this, or at least play devil's advocate for the listener.
Go for it.
Because I can understand the Buddha vetoing the first proposal. Flipping the earth, even with a giant magical hand, runs a massive risk of harming the creatures living on it.
Definitely.
But teleporting the monks to Uttarakuru seems like a completely victimless solution.
It harms no one. It solves the starvation crisis.
And it relies entirely on Moggallana taking on the physical burden.
So why would the Buddha veto a perfectly safe solution to saving his followers from starving to death?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's a crucial question. The answer lies in the fundamental philosophy of the monastic order's relationship to humanity.
The monastic community, the Sangha, was never meant to be a privileged, insulated caste that magically escapes the hardships of the human condition.
They are meant to be deeply integrated with society.
They rely on the laity for food, and in return, they provide spiritual guidance and a field of merit.
A symbiotic relationship.
Exactly. If the monks use magic to flee to a utopian dimension the moment a famine strikes, they sever that bond.
They become completely separate from the suffering of the people they are meant to guide.
The Buddha recognized that sharing in the collective vulnerability of human existence,
Even the brutal reality of a famine,
was philosophically necessary.
escaping to Uttarakuru would have solved the biological problem of hunger while completely destroying the ethical and societal foundation of the monastic order.
That is such a profound perspective on leadership.
It really is. It reminds me of the vivid analogy the sources use to explain the danger of Moggallana's first proposal, the earth flipping.
They compare it to a massive fish tank where the sand at the bottom has become toxic.
Moggallana is like a well-intentioned person who tries to fix the problem by violently upending the entire tank to swap the sand.
Even if you try to catch all the fish in a net while you do it, the shock to the system, the violent disruption of their environment, will inevitably traumatize or kill the fish.
It is a perfect metaphor for the limits of geoengineering or any massive top-down intervention.
We often see this mindset today in technology or economics.
The belief that if we just apply enough raw power or innovation, we can hack our way out of systemic issues.
Without dealing with the complex, fragile web of consequences.
The Buddha acts as the ultimate systems thinker here.
Recognizing that brute force, even wrapped in good intentions and magical safety measures, cannot replace careful integration with reality.
It makes you wonder, though, how does a human being even reach a state where flipping a planet is a viable option on the table?
Right. The texts don't just say Moggallana was magic.
They actually provide a rigorous breakdown of the mechanics of his power, these supernatural abilities called idhi.
They do. In this framework, supernatural powers are not divine gifts bestowed by a creator deity.
They are the byproduct of an incredibly specific, intense cultivation of the mind.
The texts attribute Moggallana's abilities to his absolute perfection of the four iddhipada, the four paths of accomplishment.
Let's break those down because they sound remarkably like the foundational traits of high performance in any field.
Just taken to a cosmic extreme.
The first is chanda, which is will or intense aspiration.
The second is virya, meaning energy or relentless effort.
third is citta, which translates to active mindfulness or unified mental focus.
And the fourth is vimamsa, which is investigation or deep analytical reasoning.
To understand how these transcend normal human capacity, we have to look at the mechanics of deep meditation or samadhi.
Most human beings experience these four traits in a fragmented, fluctuating way.
Our will wavers, our energy depletes, our focus drifts.
But through lifetimes of rigorous meditative discipline, Moggallana unified these four attributes.
When chanda, virya, citta, and vimamsa are perfectly synchronized and sustained without a single microsecond of distraction.
The mind ceases to be just an organ of perception and becomes an instrument of creation.
It gains the ability to interact with the foundational elements of physical matter.
But the Buddha was incredibly meticulous in how he categorized the results of this mental power.
He didn't view all miracles equally.
The texts show he divided them into three distinct hierarchies.
The first is iddha-pariharya, the physical miracles.
This is the spectacular manipulation of matter, walking on water, diving through solid rock, or transforming one's body.
The second category is adesana-pariharya, which involves the mastery over the unseen mental world.
Telepathy, mind reading, and the precise knowing of another being's psychological state.
And then there is the third type, anusasana-pariharya, which translates to the miracle of teaching and instruction.
And the Buddha made a very clear, perhaps unexpected, declaration here.
He stated that the miracle of teaching is infinitely superior to the physical miracles or telepathy.
It is the core of his entire philosophy.
Why is teaching a higher miracle than flying?
Because physical miracles do not solve the root problem of existence.
If Moggallana flies through the sky, the people watching might be awestruck, they might be terrified, they might even worship him.
But when the spectacle is over, their minds remain bound by the exact same ignorance, greed, and anger as before.
The physical miracle changes the environment, but it does not change the observer.
It's an ultimate superficial fix.
Exactly. But the anusasana-pariharya, the miracle of teaching, involves using deep empathy and wisdom to say the exact right sequence of words at the exact right moment to fundamentally shift another person's worldview.
When you guide someone to understand the nature of their own suffering and how to dismantle it, you have enacted a permanent transformation.
The illusion of self is broken. That is a true, lasting miracle.
If we look at how that applies today, you see this dynamic constantly in modern leadership and education.
We are so obsessed with life hacks and quick fixes today.
It is far easier for a skilled manager to just step in and fix a complex problem themselves.
That's the physical miracle.
It's fast, looks impressive, and it solves the immediate crisis.
But it leaves the team completely dependent and unchanged.
The infinitely harder task, the true miracle of leadership, is having the patience and insight to guide the team so they shift their mindset and learn to solve the problem themselves.
It's the difference between doing magic for an audience and teaching the audience how reality actually works.
It's a very apt comparison.
And while Moggallana was uniquely capable of those physical fixes, he was guided by the Buddha to ensure his immense power was utilized primarily to facilitate that higher miracle of shifting minds.
This transition from raw power to psychological intervention is perfectly illustrated in one of the most famous events of his life.
The encounter with the Naga king, Nandopananda.
This event is often read like an ancient action epic, but as we dive into it, the psychological layers are fascinating.
To set the context, the Buddha and a retinue of monks are traveling toward the Tavatimsa heavenly realm.
However, their trajectory is intentionally blocked by Nandopananda.
Nandopananda is not simply a creature, he's a Naga king of immense size and terrifying magical capability.
Characterized by a deeply entrenched, narcissistic ego.
The texts describe him as being so massive that he wraps his serpentine body around Mount Sumeru.
The cosmological center of the world system.
He wraps around it 7 times.
He spreads his hood to completely eclipse the path to the heavens, enveloping the region in thick, blinding smoke.
He is essentially holding a cosmic blockade because he perceives the monks traveling above his realm as a slight to his pride.
Several highly advanced monks in the retinue step forward and volunteer to clear the path.
But the Buddha forbids them.
He recognizes that their level of power is insufficient to counter the sheer, overwhelming density of Nandopananda's ego.
Finally, Moggallana steps forward, and the Buddha permits him to engage.
What follows is an astonishing exertion of elemental force.
Moggallana doesn't attempt to negotiate with the Naga's pride.
He shapeshifts, taking the form of an even larger Naga, and physically constricts Nandopananda against the cosmic mountain.
The Naga king, enraged, retaliates by exhaling a massive cloud of poisonous vapor.
Moggallana counters by entering a specific meditative state focused on the wind element, generating a gale that forces the poison back.
Nandopananda escalates to expelling intense flames.
Moggallana responds by entering Teho-Kasina.
We should clarify Teho-Kasina for those unfamiliar. It's not just a magic spell for fire, right?
No. Kasina meditation involves taking a physical element, in this case, fire, and focusing the mind upon it until the physical object is replaced by a purified mental image.
By mastering Teho-Kasina, Moggallana could generate and control the fire element directly from his consciousness.
He produces a fire that is exponentially hotter and more consuming than the Nagas, completely neutralizing the attack without suffering any burns himself.
The Naga king is utterly overwhelmed.
His physical defenses are crushed, his elemental attacks are neutralized, and he is forced to surrender.
He shrinks down, abandons his pride, and takes refuge in the Buddhist teachings.
Now, on the surface, this looks like a brutal display of dominance.
But the intent is everything.
Exactly.
This was not a battle born of malice or ego on Moggallana's part. It was a highly calibrated psychological intervention.
Nandopananda's mind was so encased in arrogance and the belief in his own supreme power that words, the miracle of teaching, could not penetrate it.
The Naga was unreachable by reason.
Moggallana utilized overwhelming, terrifying force for a singular purpose, to shatter that physical and psychological armor.
Only when the Naga realized he was not the center of the universe, only when his pride was thoroughly broken, did his mind become malleable enough to receive the teachings.
Moggallana used the physical miracle to forcefully pave the way for the teaching miracle.
It's the ultimate expression of breaking someone down to build them up.
But Moggallana's use of power wasn't limited to subduing cosmic entities.
He also utilized his abilities to act as a metaphysical researcher.
The sources describe him frequently traveling through the various cosmological planes, both the heavenly realms and the deep hells.
And this wasn't mere sightseeing. He was conducting empirical data collection.
The Buddhist cosmological model features a complex hierarchy of realms governed strictly by cause and effect.
Moggallana would travel to the magnificent mansions of the deities in the heavenly planes and conduct interviews.
He would approach a glowing deity and ask, "What precise action did you take in your previous human existence to generate the karma for this specific result?"
The data he brings back is striking in its simplicity. It demystifies the mechanics of karma.
One deity reveals that their current state is the result of simply offering a piece of sugarcane to a passing monk.
Another earned their realm by steadfastly keeping a single difficult promise.
Moggallana would then travel to the hell realms, observe the specific torments, and trace them back to specific acts of cruelty, deceit, or selfishness.
The sociological impact of this research cannot be overstated.
Before Moggallana, karma was largely discussed as an abstract philosophical theory.
Moggallana brought back observable, empirical case studies.
When he reported these findings to the laity, it made the invisible mechanics of cause and effect viscerally real.
It created a massive shift in the religious landscape.
The texts explicitly note that his detailed reports caused thousands of people to alter their behavior and take refuge in the Buddha's path.
Consequently, this caused a severe economic and social decline for the rival religious sects in the region.
A detail that will become dangerously relevant later in our deep dive.
It's also vital to note how Moggallana's cosmic journeys bridged across different cultural traditions over the centuries.
His descents into the lower realms were driven by deep compassion, which is immortalized in Chinese Mahayana traditions.
Yes, the cultural ripple effect.
In Mahayana texts, Moggallana is known as Mulian.
There is a profoundly influential narrative where he uses his divine eye to search the realms for his deceased mother.
He finds her reborn in a lower realm as a hungry ghost.
A state characterized by insatiable, agonizing hunger.
Using his powers, he attempts to offer her a bowl of rice. But the moment the food reaches her mouth, her own heavy karma combusts it into burning ashes.
It is a tragic realization that his raw supernatural power cannot override her individual karmic state.
He returns to the Buddha, who instructs him that the only way to alter her trajectory is to generate a massive amount of collective merit.
By making offerings to the assembled monastic community on the final day of the rainy season retreat and dedicating that merit to her.
And that specific act of filial piety, facilitated by Moggallana, is the foundational origin of the Ghost Festival, or Ulambana.
which remains a major cultural and religious observance for millions across Asia today.
It all traces back to his desperate attempt to use his abilities to save his mother.
It highlights a beautiful synthesis in his character.
He engages in cosmic battles and traverses hellscapes, but his motivations are deeply anchored in service and compassion.
But it wasn't just cosmic journeys. He also used these powers for entirely mundane tasks.
We even see this in the everyday world.
The Buddha appointed Moggallana as the Navakamadhitai, the chief construction overseer.
For the Pubarama Monastery, a massive architectural project funded by the prominent laywoman Pisaka.
It feels almost jarring to transition from exploring hell realms to managing a construction site.
But it illustrates how he viewed his power as a tool for service.
In an ancient era devoid of heavy machinery, constructing a multi-story monastic complex was a monumental logistical hurdle.
Moggallana utilized his mastery over physical matter to expedite the labor.
Moving massive stone blocks, raising heavy timber, and ensuring the structural integrity of the complex.
He didn't consider manual labor beneath him. He used his cosmic abilities to lay bricks so the community could thrive.
He was a master of context, always using the appropriate tool for the required situation.
However, the use of supernatural abilities was about to face a severe systemic restriction.
The Buddha was keenly aware of the psychological hazards of allowing these powers to be displayed freely.
And a specific incident forced him to draw an absolute line in the sand regarding magic.
This brings us to the incident of the sandalwood bowl.
It takes place in the wealthy city of Rajagaha.
A prominent, incredibly wealthy millionaire acquires a massive, flawless block of rare sandalwood.
He commissions it to be carved into an exquisite, priceless bowl.
But he isn't interested in using it. He is a skeptic, and he wants to test the claims of the local religious leaders.
He engineers a highly public spectacle.
He places the sandalwood bowl in a net and suspends it from a towering sequence of bamboo poles, hoisting it high into the air in the center of the city.
He then issues a sweeping challenge to every spiritual sect. If there is any truly enlightened being in this world, if any of you actually possess the miraculous powers you claim, fly up and retrieve this bowl. If you can do it, my entire family will become your devoted followers.
It's a direct assault on the pride and legitimacy of the religious establishment.
The texts describe a slightly comical scene where the leaders of rival sects, who do not possess any real power, try to figure out a way to get the bowl without exposing their fraud.
They attempt to orchestrate scenarios where they pretend they are about to fly up, but instruct their disciples to physically restrain them, creating an illusion that they are only holding back out of modesty.
The public sees right through this.
The citizens of Rajagaha begin murmuring, concluding that the entire religious class is a fraud and that true enlightenment doesn't exist.
This skepticism begins to poison the societal atmosphere.
While this public relations disaster is unfolding, Moggallana and another highly accomplished monk, Pindola Bharadvaja, are walking through the city on their morning alms round.
They overhear the villagers mocking the concept of enlightenment.
Now, Moggallana is the undisputed pinnacle of supernatural power. He could retrieve that bowl with a fraction of his will.
But his reaction is fascinating. He doesn't step forward to claim the glory.
He turns to Pindola and says, "You go get it."
This is a profound demonstration of Moggallana's complete lack of ego.
He recognizes that Pindola is also highly capable, and rather than centralizing all authority and awe upon himself, he actively steps aside to allow a peer to demonstrate the reality of the Sangha's spiritual attainments.
So Pindola accepts.
He enters a meditative state, levitates off the ground, and to ensure the demonstration is absolutely undeniable, he doesn't just fly to the bowl.
He uses his power to lift a massive boulder, holding it over his head like a sunshade, and proceeds to fly 3 complete laps around the entire city of Rajagaha.
The citizens are initially terrified that the boulder will crush them, but their fear quickly transforms into absolute awe.
Pindola casually retrieves the sandalwood bowl and returns to the monastery.
The reaction of the crowd is exactly what you would expect.
They lose their minds.
A massive, hysterical mob follows Pindola back to the monastery, cheering, shouting, and demanding more miracles. The noise is deafening.
The Buddha hears this massive commotion from its quarters and asks his attendant Ananda to investigate.
When the Buddha is informed that Pindola has flown through the air to retrieve a wooden bowl and has consequently incited a citywide frenzy, the Buddha's reaction is swift and severe.
He summons Pindola before the assembly of monks.
And he delivers a remarkably harsh rebuke.
He does not praise Pindola for defending the honor of the teachings or converting the skeptic.
Instead, he systematically dismantles Pindola's action.
The Buddha asks how a monk could display the highest conditions of spiritual refinement for something as trivial as a miserable wooden bowl.
To underscore the degradation of the act, the Buddha compares displaying supernatural powers for a material reward to a woman exposing her body in public for a coin.
It's a brutal comparison that highlights just how cheaply the spiritual attainment was traded.
The Buddha then takes the priceless sandalwood bowl, orders it to be ground into fine powder to be used as a basic eye ointment for the monks, completely destroying its material value.
Most importantly, he establishes a formal monastic rule, an offense known as a dukkaya.
We should clearly define what a dukkaya is within the Vinaya, the monastic code.
It translates to an offense of wrongdoing.
It requires formal confession and indicates a breach of the behavioral standards expected of the Sangha.
The new rule was absolute. From that moment forward, it was strictly forbidden for any monk to display supernatural powers to lay people.
This raises an important question. This is a major turning point in the text, and it feels a bit counterintuitive.
If these powers are authentic, and if Moggallana previously used his cosmic tours to successfully convert thousands of people, why completely ban the display of miracles? Why hide the evidence?
Because the Buddha was a master psychologist, and he understood the corrosive nature of spectacle.
When you perform a physical miracle for an untrained crowd, you cultivate the wrong kind of faith.
The people cheering for Pindola didn't suddenly understand the nuances of dependent origination. They just wanted to see a man fly.
They become addicted to the magic.
They treat the monks like a circus act.
Worse, they begin to view the monks as demigods to be placated for favors, rather than as guides teaching a method of mental liberation.
The Buddha realized that if the religion relied on supernatural spectacle, the actual rigorous internal work of meditation and ethical living would be completely overshadowed.
People would constantly look outward for a magical savior to fix their problems, rather than looking inward to dismantle their own suffering.
The ban on miracles was a protective measure to preserve the integrity of the Anussasanapadahariya, the miracle of teaching.
It's a profound boundary to set. It forces the focus back onto the individual's responsibility for their own mind.
But as strict as the Buddha was about regulating human power, the texts reveal that there is a cosmic limit to power that even the most enlightened being cannot override.
And this brings us to the final, somber segment of our deep dive, the tragic climax of Moggallana's life.
To understand how his life ends, we have to look back at the economic consequences of his earlier actions.
We discussed how Moggallana's empirical reports from heaven and hell triggered mass conversions to the Buddhist path.
The direct result of this was a catastrophic loss of followers, prestige, and financial support for the rival ascetic sects in the region.
They were essentially driven to bankruptcy.
And their reaction was not philosophical, it was murderous.
Driven by pure hatred and desperation, the leaders of these rival factions pool whatever resources they have left and hire a band of ruthless assassins.
Their contract is specific. Locate Moggallana, who is meditating in solitude at a place called Kalasila, and kill him.
The assassins locate his dwelling and surround it.
Now remember who they are attacking. This is the individual who physically crushed a cosmic serpent king who could travel through solid earth as easily as walking through air.
When the assassins breach his dwelling the first time, Moggallana simply utilizes his mastery of matter, slips through the keyhole, and vanishes.
The assassins are frustrated, but they wait.
They return a few days later, and again, Moggallana seamlessly escapes through the roof, completely untouched.
But on their third attempt, the fundamental laws of reality shift.
The assassins surround him, and when Moggallana attempts to enter the deep meditative absorptions that grant him his abilities, the power is gone.
His id completely vanishes. He is left entirely bound by the physical limitations of an ordinary human body.
The assassins break in, and they brutally beat him.
The texts spare no detail here. They describe the bandits smashing his bones until they are shattered into pieces the size of rice grains, leaving his mangled body for dead.
It is a shocking, incredibly violent end for a figure of such immense stature.
The texts note that he utilizes the very last remnants of his mental strength to hold his broken physical form together just long enough to travel to the Buddha.
To pay his final respects and formally announce his passing into Nirvana.
But the question that echoes through this entire narrative is, why?
How does the master of the universe suddenly lose his powers? How does a fully enlightened being fall victim to common thugs?
The Buddha addresses this confusion directly, revealing a horrifying reality from Moggallana's deep, deep past.
The Buddha explains to the devastated assembly that Moggallana's murder was not a failure of his meditation, nor was it a failure of his enlightenment.
It was the unavoidable ripening of a Garuka karma, an exceptionally heavy, dark karma from a previous existence countless eons ago.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The Buddha recounts that in a distant past life, Moggallana was a devoted son, the sole caretaker for his elderly, entirely blind parents.
However, he married a woman who grew deeply resentful of the burden they represented.
She was a master of psychological manipulation.
She would intentionally scatter food and create filth around the house, blaming the messes on the blind parents.
She slowly, systematically poisoned her husband's mind against them, whispering day after day that they were a destructive burden, demanding he choose between her and them.
Eventually, the son's mind breaks under the constant manipulation, and he agrees to commit an unthinkable act.
He tells his blind parents that he's taking them on a journey to visit relatives.
He loads them into a cart and drives them deep into a dense, isolated forest.
He then hands the reins to his blind father, telling him to hold the cart steady while he walks ahead to check for highwaymen.
The son steps away, alters his voice, and violently attacks the cart, pretending to be a vicious bandit.
He brutally beats his own blind, helpless parents to death.
And the detail in the text that makes this truly agonizing is the reaction of the parents.
While they're being beaten to death by the bandit, they do not beg for their own lives.
They cry out, "Son, run! There are bandits attacking! Save yourself! Leave us!"
They spend their final moments trying to protect the very son who is murdering them.
It is an act of supreme betrayal and cruelty.
The Buddha explains that the karmic consequence of murdering one's own parents, especially parents exhibiting such pure love, is mathematically massive.
Moggallana had already spent countless lifetimes suffering in the lowest hell realms, paying off the bulk of this karmic debt.
But karmic seeds do not just disappear. They lay dormant, waiting for the exact right conditions to sprout.
Precisely. Even though he had reached his final life, even though he was a fully enlightened arahant, a residual fraction of that physical debt remained on the cosmic ledger.
And this requires us to understand the deep mechanics of what enlightenment actually is versus what physical reality is. We need to distinguish between vimutti and khandha.
This is the philosophical crux of the entire deep dive. Vimutti is complete mental liberation.
As an arahant, Moggallana's mind was utterly free. He had eradicated all ignorance, all craving, all mental suffering.
His consciousness was pristine and unshakable.
But his body.
His body is the khandha, the physical aggregates of form, feeling, and perception.
The physical body remains tethered to the material world, which is governed strictly by the law of cause and effect.
Mental liberation does not grant you immunity from the physics of past actions. The ledger must balance.
So when the conditions aligned, when the assassins arrived for the third time, the karmic weight of that ancient murder finally ripened.
And the brutal truth of the universe is that no amount of magic, no amount of ED can override the foundational law of karma.
The laws of cause and effect supersede the manipulation of matter.
His powers didn't fail. They were simply rendered completely irrelevant by the gravity of his own past action.
And this is where we see the absolute peak of Moggallana's spiritual attainment.
When he realized his powers were gone, he didn't panic. He didn't rage against the unfairness of it.
His profound, enlightened wisdom allowed him to look back, see the karmic seed ripening, and recognize its absolute justice.
He didn't fight back because he chose to surrender to the truth of his own actions. He accepted the physical consequence with a mind of complete, undisturbed peace.
That is heavy. It forces a complete recalibration of how we understand strength.
We have covered an immense expanse of cosmological and psychological territory today.
We watched Kolita, the wealthy aristocrat, strip away his illusions.
We saw Moggallana, the cosmic master, casually propose flipping the earth and teleporting across dimensions.
We witnessed him crush the egos of serpents and map the architecture of hell.
But ultimately, the pinnacle of his story isn't a display of supernatural dominance.
His story culminates in the profound dignity of a man who stopped manipulating reality and peacefully submitted to the unbreakable laws of consequence.
It fundamentally redefines power. For anyone listening, you obviously aren't grappling with the ability to enter Teo Casina or teleport away from a famine.
But the human instinct remains identical. We constantly seek powers or hacks to avoid the painful consequences of our actions.
We try to outmaneuver our own karma.
Moggallana's final moments teach us that true ultimate power is not the ability to bend the world to avoid your problems.
True power is possessing the mental clarity and fortitude to stand perfectly still and face the consequences of your reality without a trace of fear.
That is the actual miracle, the miracle of unshakable presence.
So true.
So, as we close this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to examine in your own life.
We spend so much energy trying to construct magical solutions, whether it's wealth, status, or distraction, to avoid the heavy truths we carry.
If the man who could literally rearrange the atoms of the universe realized that his greatest exertion of strength was to simply put down his power and accept the ledger of his past,
What is that one unavoidable truth in your own life that you've been using all your energy to outrun?
and what would shift internally if, right now, you stopped seeking an escape to Uttarakuru and simply turned around to face it? Take some time with that. We will catch you on the next deep dive.